You're listening to Parenting Our Future with certified parent coach Robbin McManne, author of The Yelling Cure and founder of Parenting for Connection. My podcast is all about providing you with the tools and solutions you need in your parenting so you can create the family you always wanted. Hey everybody, welcome back to Parenting Our Future. It's Robbin McManne here again, and I have two really special guests today. We're talking about social media safety, and I am honored to have from the Organization for Social Media Safety, I have Marc Berkman, who is the CEO of this amazing organization. Welcome, Marc. Happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having us, Robbin.
You're welcome. And I also have Ed Peisner, and he is the founder and serves as the National Education Director for the Organization for Social Media Safety as well. Welcome, Ed.
Hi, Robbin. Thank you for having us.
You are. I am honored, truly, to have you here and to talk about a really difficult subject because, you know, we're all sitting here talking about social media, and one of the things that I know for sure is as parents, we're pioneers in this whole, you know, this whole subject.
Yes.
We're sucked in by it too. I mean, I sit down at night, watch TV, and play on my phone too, right? So I know that there's a lot going on, and so what I would love to do is start with really your why. You know, let's talk about your why, and then I want to talk about what the Organization for Social Media Safety is. So, Ed, can I as a founder, can I
Absolutely.
have you yeah,
Absolutely. So I will share my why, my story. And you, again, a minute ago, we just talked, we're parents. We're all parents, Marc, everybody listening. My why began 4 years ago on a typical Friday afternoon when my child, Jordan, at the time was 14 years old, had called me after school and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm walking home from school." Every Friday, I allowed him to walk home not too far. It's like a mile. I said, "Sure, son." Again, it was a typical Friday afternoon. I was home with my daughter, who was a couple years younger at the time. I believe we were making little pizza bites or cookies in the oven. And I told Jordan, "I'll see him in a little while." And I got a phone call about 20 minutes later or so from one of his friends. And they said, "Mr. Peisner, somebody punched Jordan. You need to come down here." He was half a mile away at a fast food restaurant. I said, "Sure, okay, I'm on the way." And I just told my daughter, "Watch the oven." You know, I grabbed an ice pack thinking it was just, you know, a nosebleed or something like that. And I just nonchalantly drove down,
right.
you know, thinking nothing of it. When I got there, what I came upon was a police car, an ambulance, a fire truck, and a horde of kids, 30, 40 kids. And I mean, I get chills telling this story every time Marc knows this. I threw my door open, threw the car in park, ran to the ambulance, through the kids, and there's my son in the back of the ambulance. He is covered in blood. His eyes are rolled back, and you know, I'm asking the paramedic, "What's going on?" They said, "Listen, he's got a epidural hematoma. He's bleeding inside the head, in the brain. It's coming out his ear." So hard every time, this part. And I said, "Okay." They said, "We're going to take him to the local hospital." I jump out of the ambulance, and then the kids run up to me, and I said, "What happened? Someone tell me what happened." And Robbin, they took their phone. They said, "Look," and they're showing me. I swear to God, this happens every time I tell this story. They're showing me the video. And there's my son talking to a friend, and there's this boy walking up behind him, and with all of his might, he just levels my son. One punch, side of the head. Jordan's not seeing this coming. He's from behind. And you hear the sound. I can't even listen to the sound anymore. He falls to the ground, unconscious, and then what you see on the video are people running over and filming him.
Oh my God.
Taking his picture. They have the whole thing from before and after. No one stopped. The person who's filming, the person walking up to my son, they didn't scream and say, "Stop, stop, stop." They filmed. Then, of course, when it was done, they shared it on social media. they're passing it around like you pass around, a stick of gum, maybe handing it out to people.
Wow.
So Jordan went to the local hospital. His brain injury was traumatic. They said he has a traumatic brain injury. They airlifted him to Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. He spent a week in the ICU where he had a 14 some odd millimeter hematoma inside, swelling of the brain.
Yeah.
We heard things like they might take a piece of a skull out, they might drill in holes, there's a chance he might not make it. The first 6 hours are the most important 6 hours. Things you, as a parent, you never want to hear ever.
Yeah.
And, a week later, he was released from the hospital. We opted, the neurosurgeon opted to leave the hematoma in and let's see the progression. Some bodies, and because with surgery comes other risks. So they said this has less risk than that. He came home, and after he was released and we got home, and obviously that moment in time was etched in my head forever, but that moment in time is here forever, never to go away on social media. And that was, that's really the turning point in my life. When I got home, I started looking into what could we do. I don't want any family to ever experience what I experienced. How could I turn this mess into a message? And I started by going to the schools and talking to the kids. And I reached out to my local assembly member's office here where I live to see if there were laws that we could prosecute or do something. We have to do something. And at the time, Marc Berkman was the chief of staff for my local assembly member. And coincidentally, by the time I reached out to Marc about a week later, the video of Jordan made it into Marc's inbox via email within a few hours of it happening. That's how rapidly these things spread today. I mean, when we say going viral, we mean viral. And Marc had already, when I contacted his office, he'd already known about it. Oh, you're Ed Peisner. Yeah, we know what happened to your son.
Oh
So
my goodness.
that's the why. That's the why. And honestly, I didn't know where to begin. Thank God for Marc. We both really started doing some research and looking into this and realized, wow, something had to be done.
Wow. So is Jordan okay?
My answer to that question has been Jordan's different. Jordan's alive. I get to hug Jordan. But he's different. His personality has changed. It affected him physically, emotionally.
Oh yeah.
He was, this budding drama student who was always, vying for the lead role in a show. And he was just starting 9th grade when this happened. His entire high school experience was ruined, absolutely ruined. He did not have the high school experience that he wanted to have. He dropped out of drama class. He became the, oh, you're that boy, and it affected him emotionally. And it still does to this day. We're still dealing with that. The physical nature of it, we're still dealing with. He did have hearing loss because his eardrum was ruptured. And when it healed, he lost some hearing. He's different. He's different, but he's mine, and I still get to hug him. And so I'm blessed beyond. But it also affected, I have 2 other children. I have a younger daughter and an older son, and it affected them.
Yeah.
So that's my why. I could sort of turn it over to Marc because he could tell you the how and what we did to begin.
Yeah, I would love to know that and how the organization for social media safety was born. I think, thank you for sharing that and being so vulnerable and open about it. I can see how hard that was. I don't know, people they're listening either through podcast platform or through YouTube. And I mean, yeah.
Hard. It's hard every time. It's been 4 years and I feel like it was yesterday. Every time I tell that story, because I visualize my son in the back of that ambulance, what I came upon, and I get tears in my eyes, and because it's my boy, that's my child. Someone, he almost died.
Yeah.
And it's a thought you never, ever want to have as a parent.
And then to also have to let go of and make peace with the life that you thought he may have, right? And
Oh,
to accept what
absolutely.
is. And
Yeah,
that is
absolutely.
I can see that would be really tough. Yeah. Well, Marc, tell me, what happened for you? How did this all unfold for you?
Yes, so as Ed said, the really horrific video of this attack was in my inbox, I want to say within an hour of it happening, maybe two. So it went viral very quickly. It's now been viewed by, I think, millions of people all over. And so in our office, we obviously, like everyone else watching it, there's a revulsion, a sickening, and there was also this intuitive sense, or not even intuitive, but a real sense that these videos were out there, that kids were watching them, that they were motivating these types of attacks and violence. So we did our research to see what we could do to help, to see if there was a way to legislate to help solve part of this problem. And what we did was we ended up graphing what we now call social media motivated violence, or attacks committed for the purpose of filming and putting on social media to gain notoriety, to get those likes and shares. So starting at the birth of what we call major social media with Facebook around 2004, 2006, we saw about 2 to 4 attacks of what was then called the knockout game, where people would walk up behind a victim and hit them with the intent of filming it, knocking them out, and putting it on social media.
And is that, sorry to interrupt you, is that what happened to Jordan? Is that why that kid hit him? Because that is one of my questions that I'm, sort of desperate to ask you, but. Oh,
Go ahead,
I was just gonna say, we don't know the exact motivation. I mean, we know that the attack happened and it was filmed and put online for this, but and some of these attacks it's filmed and put online, we don't know. We weren't party to the coordination process there. But we certainly can know on a big scale, on a macro level, that this is what's happening with all of these videos. And so what we did was we charted them out. So you got 2 to 4 in 2006. And by the time you get up to when this happened in late 2016, 2017, you have thousands and thousands of these videos on all sorts of different social media platforms being viewed by millions, and I mean millions of people, a lot of them kids, young people. And so it was horrifying, and the chart itself told the story. And so what we did was we wrote legislation that came to be known as Jordan's Law after Ed's son Jordan, which was the first piece of legislation in the nation to deter social media motivated violence. And we passed that in less than a year, which is incredibly fast for a piece of legislation. And what that bill did was it made sure that anyone in California who was coordinating with someone to commit a violent attack and film it was liable as an accomplice and subject to an enhanced sentence. And we mostly use that at this point as a teaching tool across the country and even internationally. And so the story of the Organization for Social Media Safety, though, begins because while we were working on that piece of legislation, usually as a legislative aid, you have your subject matter experts that you turn to because as an aide, you're working on a number of different issues, and you turn to other nonprofits or associations to help you with the subject matter. And on this issue, there was no one. And there was no one focused exclusively on social media safety that was serving as a consumer protection organization. And this was despite the fact that at this time, cyberbullying, everyone knew was connected to social media. That was continuing to grow exponentially. I had just come out of the foster youth sector a few years earlier too. Trafficking and social media were also incredibly linked and growing. The issue with propaganda and misinformation. We had just seen what happened with the 2016 elections and Russia and hate speech during those elections on social media, tweets in the millions of racism, misogyny, the list goes on and on. So all of these issues going on with social media, all of these dangers, and no one was looking at it as a focal point as an organization. And so Ed and I talked about it, and that's how we started the Organization for Social Media Safety. That's why.
Wow. Well, thank you for what you're doing. And what I love is that, this is the subject that crosses every single border. So what you're doing is really helping everybody everywhere, because this is a common issue that we are all facing globally, right? And
Yep.
I mean, and the reality is, it's not just kids that are being cyberbullied, it's adults. It's, you know, I mean, things have sort of devolved in a way that is very concerning, for sure, especially when you talk of some of the more recent events. So yeah. So in terms of, you know, so really what your organization helps parents navigate through and helps people navigate through are things like cyberbullying, you know, sexting and that sort of thing. Is that right? Like, can you tell me how you're really helping people and parents navigate this?
Yes. So we are a classic consumer protection organization. So we are built on 3 programmatic divisions. So we do advocacy. So we work at all levels of government in the US right now to enhance public policies around social media safety. So that includes things like Jordan's Law. We do technology development. So we work on software and apps that provide real-time protection against any and all social media dangers. And then there's the education piece. So we work with parents and students and educators across the world to teach social media safety skills. And that's to protect against a range of dangers. As you mentioned, cyberbullying is a big one. Also, social media addiction, excessive screen time, which leads to mental health issues and some other developmental issues. We work on that. Hate speech, sexual harassment, the list really goes on and on. So what we do is we have virtual courses, we go to schools, we teach parents and students, like I said. We also consult with schools to help them develop policies around social media safety. So we have a very comprehensive approach to protecting against a lot of these dangers.
Yeah. Okay. So what I like is that you've really got solutions for parents, and we actually do have something special for parents that are listening. So we'll talk about that at the end of the show here. So tell me, you know, what are you seeing as some of the biggest issues out there related to social media? Like what is it? Is it the hate speech? Is it cyberbullying? You know, is it the fact that, you know, we talked about how Dr. Berman, how her son was able to get drugs through Snapchat and overdosed and passed away, right?
I mean, the answer, unfortunately, is all of the above, and especially during, we're filming right now during the pandemic, of course. So all of these dangers have grown exponentially. We're a little in the dark in terms of some statistics, but we know that cyberbullying, which was probably one of the top 2 issues before when it came to social media related dangers, has grown even more during the pandemic. So that's a huge one. Screen time addiction, 63% of parents in the US have said that their kids have drastically increased their time on social media and devices. So that's growing along with that. Again, there's not proof that these are linked, but we would theorize that they are. We're seeing an increase in depression, an increase in self-harm, an increase in developmental delays from all that time on the screen. Hate speech is, I mean, you mentioned hate speech as well. So part of what we do when we go to schools is we survey the students in the school to help the school red flag any issues, and it also helps us create a huge data set at the end of each year so we can look at what's happening on the ground with social media. So hate speech, starting in the 5th grade, about 75% of 5th graders have seen explicit hate speech on social media, which is a huge issue. It's becoming normalized to them. It's increasing hate. On the very far end, we see extremist behavior coming out of kids that's generated by their time on social media, or at least a big part of their time on social media. Sexting is a continual problem. We're seeing about 40% of students 6th grade and up that have either sent or received a sext. So and unfortunately, I could keep going.
Yeah.
There's such a long list right now of these dangers. And part of the issue is, so we think of cyberbullying and we think of screen time addiction or social media addiction, but there's other dangers that parents don't think about and students don't think about, that they're not aware of. like human trafficking and some others. So part of our job is just to say, here's the danger and here's how you avoid it.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay. So there's a bunch of things that you said there, and I want to sort of address some of them in a different, in maybe a couple different categories. So, some of like sexting, texting, and that sort of thing. Look, we know that when we give our child a device that has access to the internet, that they have access to all of these things. The potential is there, right? No matter what.
Absolutely.
And kids all can be sneaky as well. So we've got to look at how they can be sneaky, but also what do they have access to? And so you've got to understand that as a parent, that they do have the potential to see pornography, right? To send a sext, to be bullied, right? And so we need to have some kind of agreement with our kids, and we need to not bury our heads in the sand and just say, oh no, my kid will be fine, right? We need to look at what they're looking at too. My youngest son, he loves anime. And then I found out about hentai. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like we better not be looking at that, right? I mean, I didn't have any idea. And so I don't think I am different than most parents. I mean, I'm tuned into more things, but at the same time, there's a lot I don't know. And that's scary, right? That's really scary.
Absolutely.
I think there's two issues for us parents. One, we didn't grow up with this. So it is new to us and it's new to our kids, and that's dangerous and confusing and scary. And that makes it seem, it makes it seem overwhelming. Some parents feel guilt because they don't know what they should be doing. And that's really where we come in and say that protecting your child on these devices is doable.
Okay, yeah. So give me some ideas on how that is doable, just for people listening. And everyone's going to go to your site and check everything out. But what are some tips that you have?
Of course. So first of all, we were saying this a little as we were talking before the interview, that we love your philosophy. We love parenting from a place of empathy and from a place where you're not escalating parent-child conflict. Right. And that's how we try to think about and set up how we teach parents and the tips that we use. So on the 10,000 foot level, when we teach parents, we have actually created a system for parents to make it so you're not hunting and pecking through the internet for a tip here and a tip there, or the relying on the parent rumor mill. We really wanted to create a comprehensive system for parents. And that system is a tip in itself. In our view, you need three things to help keep there's obviously no guarantees, but to help keep your child safe on social media. You need to have conversations with your child. One, to raise awareness of the dangers as we talked about, and two, to instill the various principles and values that will help them respond to the various dangers. Some of them they're likely to encounter when they're on social media. So one is conversations, two is rules. So it's purposely a separate part. So you have the conversations, open, honest, transparent conversation. Obviously, what you talk about is going to vary depending upon the exact age of your child. And then the second part is rules. So then you set out the rules that obviously fit for your family. On our site, we have a template that parents can use. Again, that's going to vary depending upon your particular family circumstances, but you set out the rules, what your children are supposed to do when they use social media each and every time. And then three is the settings that you need to set on your child's devices, on their operating systems, and on the social media platforms that you allow on their phones. A lot of parents don't do the settings calibration process of this, and it's vitally important. And when we talk about decreasing parent-child conflict, the settings play a huge role, because what you can do is, if you want to prevent against an unsafe amount of time on social media, you just set up your time limits. Set it up, hands off, and then what it does is that's automatically consistent parenting. You don't have to intervene. it just shuts off every time, and your child develops the habit of that's how long they're going to use social media for. So it decreases the conflict. You're also automatically blocking some of this content and some of these sites and some of these platforms that your child is not developmentally old enough to or mature enough to be on. And so again, you're not having to intervene every day, every 5 seconds and be over your child, monitoring and watching. You can let the technology do that piece for you. So those are the 10,000 foot level tips. Obviously we have a ton of tips we could get into that are one-off tips, but those are the most important, I think, for parents to understand this system.
Yeah. And you know, what that does for me is it just reinforces once again that connection with our kids is the highest priority, right?
Yep.
Because when we have connection, and connection to me means that there is a respect that we have for our kids, and also that we're willing to listen to them when they speak to us. So they know when they have something to tell us, like if they're being bullied or if they're depressed or whatever's going on, that they know that they have an open door to speak to us, and we will not judge them, criticize them, fly off the handle, punish them, you know, tell everybody around, like that we are just there for them and only them, and help them work it out. Right.
Absolutely.
I mean,
yes.
Everything.
1,000 times yes on that. It's everything. That's part of making sure the parents go through this conversation process too, and saying that explicitly, because if you say it explicitly, there's more of a chance that your child's going to internalize it too. And they will encounter issues on social media, and you want to be the one that they come to. Yeah. And so that's absolutely crucial. And once you lose trust on social media as your child gets older, you know, if parent-child conflict is escalated, they're more likely to get a burner phone, hack around any settings that you've set up. And so having trust in the relationship, especially within the context of social media usage, is very important.
And starting early, Robbin, we talked, you have, you know, children, I have children. Yeah, you heard my story, you heard my why, but before that happened, I gave my kids, you know, all three. I was a single father. They all had smartphones, you know, when they were in middle school. I gave them all phones. I didn't have any conversations. This wasn't available at all. I truly wish this organization was available and the conversations piece was, so I knew the conversations to have. I'm very open with my parenting with my kids, but I didn't know what to say to them. I handed them a phone and said, here you go. Like most parents, like Marc said, you know, it's new to all of us. None of us knew.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is too, it's not going anywhere. So we need to be smarter, right? And smarter than our kids, a step ahead of our kids, because they're so smart. We can't put our hand up and say, no, I'm off the technology train. I don't want to learn anymore. No, you got to dive in, right? And if that connection isn't strong, I mean, doesn't that make that world outside of your home even more tantalizing, even more seductive, right?
Of course.
Makes you more vulnerable if you don't have a strong connection. I mean, it comes down to that time and time again. So
I've heard that a lot.
What I would add to that thought too is a lot of parents think you have to go in and learn the platforms and learn the ins and outs of each of the platforms. I think some of the people working in the space will echo that. You don't really need to. You need to understand whether platform is appropriate for your child's age level or not, and you just need to have these conversations and set these rules, which are based on general principles. Yeah. Okay, that's actually a really good piece of advice, because I think, you know, that is what some parents may think. Well, okay, now I got to be on Snapchat. You know, I don't want to be on Snapchat.
Right. I have to be an expert. Yeah.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Totally. Now, so thank you for adding that in. Let's talk about screen addiction, because it is such a difficult issue that every single parent is dealing with. And like you said, because of the pandemic and, you know, just boredom, and for all the right reasons, in a way, you've sort of gone to screens. You know, I probably watch more TV too, you know, than I did before. So what do we say? What do we say about addiction? What's it about? What do we look for? How do we stop it? How do we disconnect? All of the questions, please.
Well, first of all, for any of the mental health experts in your audience, addiction is a very specific term. We're using it colloquially, so
right. Thank you.
For our purposes, we essentially mean excessive use that is having some sort of negative impact on the child. Do we believe that it's addictive in a clinical sense? Probably. I think the evidence is still to come on that in a big way. But we all know it intuitively. We are addicted for the most part. The parents, we need to be looking at the phones. Parents are at restaurants looking at the phones, at their kids' games when we were able to have games, I guess. So, and the stats are bearing that out too. We found that self-reported kids 6th grade and up are reporting 4 hours plus a day on average on social media. And that was before the pandemic. And
so I was going to say at least,
it was before the pandemic. So we can only imagine what's happening now. And kids on average are on devices 9 hours a day. And again, that was before the pandemic. So, so there are issues with just time usage. And then we see very strong correlations with mental health effects like depression and suicide, eating disorders, learning deficits, sleeping issues. So it's a long list of effects that have been strongly correlated with excessive social media use and excessive general screen time use. So we're concerned.
What would that be? Why would that be, an increased risk for eating disorders and something like that? Is that because what you're looking at, you're surrounded by that, because like begets like, whatever you like is the algorithm shows you more and more and more. Is that why that is?
It's an excellent question. There really is more evidence for this causation effect beyond correlation, causation of excessive social media use and eating disorders, or even less than excessive social media use and eating disorders. So yeah, like begets like. You can sort out and filter into a community, and this is true of hate speech and some other extremist behavior as well. You get into a community and it seems bigger and realer than it is. So that's one. Two, you get positive feedback on dangerous behavior. Yep. So people use these hashtags like Thinspiration, or there are pro-Anna sites on Instagram and some other social media platforms where you gather with these people engaged in these dangerous dieting and exercise regimens, and they are giving each other false scientific information, and they are giving each other social approval, which, as you know, teens, tweens, they crave that.
Yep.
So that's a big mechanism. The other one is this reality distortion effect of social media. So if you're spending 5 hours a day on Instagram or Snap or some other sites, and you are just scrolling through your feeds, and what you're seeing is one, curated pictures. So people are only putting up their best picture. Nobody but Ed intentionally is putting up bad pictures on their social media. So the curation, and then photo editing. Most of these pictures now are edited. The teens are using apps like Facetune to edit the picture. So it creates this reality distortion of what real bodies are, what real beauty is. And that has a big effect.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah. Wow. That's a really good way to describe it, unfortunately. And, I do see, when we talk about screens and screen time and that sort of thing, we've seen a huge increase in our own home as well. And especially with boys, I think of boys having that, these games are so geared towards them, they hunt, they fight, they kill, and they're just like, it just works perfectly with the boy brain, so things are set up against us in a way too, as parents, because they're so seductive, these games and different things. So, yeah. And so I want to talk about, I mentioned Dr. Berman. Can you explain that story a little bit? Because that's what's really topical right now. Her son was able to, what happened there? How did that happen with her
Sure.
son?
So Dr. Berkman, who's actually her family's in our own backyard in Los Angeles. By the way, she's a therapist, and she has a show on the OWN network. People may have seen or heard of her. Her son, who I believe was 16, he, like the rest of us, has been isolated at home. He was on Snapchat, and he essentially ordered from a drug dealer on Snapchat some Xanax that turned out to be laced by the dealer with fentanyl, which is a dangerous opioid that drug dealers use to get you more addicted to some of these other prescription drugs that kids should also not be using, like Xanax. And he overdosed and passed away. And so it really, for us, horrifying, nauseating. Our hearts go out to Dr. Berkman and her family during this time. This is a very recent event, and they started working with us on this particular danger. The issue of connecting with people, particularly through Snapchat, which is an app designed to make your messages disappear so you can communicate almost anonymously or anonymously. These issues of purchasing drugs through Snapchat, sexting, all of these dangers. We're seeing a bigger increase during this pandemic. And this issue of substance abuse is a huge one across the world, really.
Yeah. Well, and the reason why I wanted to sort of talk about that is because that's new. I think that's new, to be able to order from your phone, a potentially lethal drug versus going out to get it or whatever. I mean, oh my goodness, that takes things to a whole new level that I never have heard of before. And, my heart breaks for Dr. Berkman to have lost a child. If her son is 16, I have a 15-year-old, and yesterday my youngest turned 13. So, we're in it with teenagers, and that's very, very, very scary. And you have the solutions and you have the way through. So thank you for what you're doing for all of us parents who are, just feeling our way through this whole thing. You are empowering us to know more, to look for what it is that we need to look for, and to just sort of, look, this is what we need to know. Like you say, you don't need to know the whole platform, but you do need to be aware. You need to be aware. And just knowing that you can put settings in place, that's huge, right? Having those rules, absolutely, you have those rules, and then you need to have the conversation about what it means when you break a rule,
Absolutely.
And also rules. I think rules for parents too, like, I won't be going into your phone and snooping if I know that these are followed, and then like you said, having that deep, being able to have those conversations, the deep connection with your kids. That's so huge in general. So this is all really great. Do you have any last words of advice or anything like that? Anything that you can leave my listeners with?
Absolutely. So if people want to check out our course for parents, which is called the Buckling the Social Media Seatbelt Super Course, it is on our website. It is free. So parents can go on and see this whole Buckling the Social Media Seatbelt system that we've laid out. It goes through everything in depth, all the tips you need, all the conversations to have. That's on our website. So that's www.ofsms.org. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. You can go there. Again,
it'll be everywhere. Yeah.
It's free. So that's the best way that we can share our expertise with parents. We are also available to go to schools and do our workshops once we're able to do that again. Work with your child's school on social media safety policies. We are available to do that. All that information, again, is on our website. If parents would like to join with us, this obviously is a massive, massive endeavor that our nonprofit is undertaking. So we need all the support that we could get. You could go to our website and find out how to support us. You can sign up for a newsletter or like us on social media as well, or follow us on social media.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be on social media, that's for sure.
We are on social media.
We are.
every platform we study. So
yes.
So it's OFSMS. right? So, and that'll be in the
Correct.
show notes, but
Correct.
it is the
.org,
Organization
yes.
for Social Media Safety. So that's why it's OFSMS. That makes perfect sense. And thank you for doing all of that. Really, truly, thank you for doing that. And look, if those of you who are listening, you take advantage of the course, you know, to donate, to support the organization that has provided this, I think that is a really wonderful thing to do back as a thank you. So I encourage people to do that as well. I just want to say it is lovely to meet both of you. You know, I'm sorry, Ed, that, you know, it started with a really, you know, sad and tragic situation. And I do hope that Jordan continues to grow and thrive and heal. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I do.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. Well, thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much
for having
us
again.
Thank you for listening to this edition of my podcast, Parenting Our Future. I'm parent coach Robbin McManne, and if you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with someone who you think might also need to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe, and if you like my work, I would be grateful if you gave me a 5-star rating. For those of you who like my content and want more, visit me at yellingcurebook.com to get your copy of my book and to find other resources to help you. Until next time, I am wishing you and your family peace and connection.